Well, the Denver Nuggets are going into the playoffs without head coach Michael Malone. That just happened. In what is yet another surprising news drop of the NBA season, the Denver Nuggets have relieved Michael Malone of his head coaching duties and have also fired Calvin Booth. And, wanted to wait a bit to record this so I could gauge the reaction. Also, I wanted to watch what the guys over at DMVR had to say. They had a live emergency podcast. I tuned into some of that just so I could, get their perspective, because they surely have more inside information than I or the listener most likely has. And, even just following the Nuggets from the outside and watching their games and stuff like that, you could just tell that the transition from Tim Connolly to Calvin Booth as the general manager, winning that title in Calvin Booth's first year as the GM, kind of papered over a lot of things. And the last few seasons, it's come to a head that Malone and Booth are just different people, different personalities, and clashed a lot. And there's not a better example than, the way the roster has been constructed the last few years, with the departures of Bruce Brown, KCP, wanting to get in more young guys, and, maybe them not panning out as fast as you would hope. And really, the only thing that I don't understand is the timing of this, because if you're trying to make a playoff run still, if your thesis is we are still trying to compete for a championship, even if you're going through this rut that the Nuggets are clearly in, and with a deficient roster from their previous championship team, you still want to go in with some continuity. And I just feel like firing your head coach when you're really in the thick of a really crazy Western Conference, you're the 4th seed, and you could get home court advantage in the first round. You have a player that's putting together one of the short list all-time great offensive seasons of all time. At least give yourself a chance. And the only way to give yourself a chance is to at least come in with some consistency, even if the team itself is consistent. I don't think changing head coaches at this point was the smart move timing-wise. I get it. I figured if the Nuggets were going to move on from Mike Malone, it would have been after the season, and that's also my gripe with the Taylor Jenkins firing. I just thought the Grizzlies would have been better off doing it after the season. I get needing to make the move. And look, we just have to come to the reality that NBA coaches are getting fired faster more than ever. There's not really long-standing coaches anymore. You really have at max. I mean, think about it. Malone was there for 7 years, 8 years. Malone was there for a long time. And yes, they won a title together. But at the same time, if your coach and your general manager are not on the same page, and honestly, hearing some of the stories that Adam Mares of DMVR was saying on his live stream, on the DMVR live stream, it really kind of just illustrated that it was kind of a personnel thing, and Michael Malone just has a different philosophy as a coach, and really just was more of where the coach is, you're the front office guy, stay in there. And Calvin Booth wanted to enact his vision in getting players that he has a different philosophy about scouting and stuff like that. So it just really sounded like two GMs that weren't on the same page. And look, you're not going to win a championship if everybody's not aligned. That's pretty obvious. But to do this now at this point in the season, but I guess the flip side argument to that would be, no, the timing wasn't great, but this was going to happen anyway, which I would have been fine with if they had moved on from Mike Malone. The Taylor Jenkins one I get too. He was there for 6 years, and at some point during your team's life cycle, whatever core you lock yourself into, there's going to be a lifespan, and at that point in the life, change can happen, and change needs to happen. So I get the Grizzlies moving on from Taylor Jenkins, logically speaking, but the timing of it, same with the Nuggets. And I feel like, they could have just waited till after the offseason. Like I said, if you get home court advantage, you win in the first round, you have the best player in the world. Who knows what could happen? Like last year, I still don't understand how the Nuggets blew that 20-point lead in Game 7 against the Timberwolves. Like, a weird circumstance like that kind of curbs a playoff run where if the Nuggets do go to at least the finals last year, we're at least looking at this maybe a little bit differently. But at the end of the day, if your coach and your GM are taking shots at each other through the media, through, thinly veiled quotes, like the guys at DNVR were also talking about how Zeke Naji was kind of like a lightning rod and kind of was like a, microcosm of the Calvin Booth and Michael Malone beef. Something had to happen, but I don't think it needed to happen now. But at the same time, if you're ownership and you have Nikola Jokic, a once-in-a-lifetime player, and you are watching the roster around you deteriorate, one, you should have paid Bruce Brown or tried to keep Bruce Brown and KCP together. That's neither here nor there. But two, you at least have to have your head coach and your general manager on the same page. And that's the first step in reestablishing some stability around Nikola Jokic. But it was clear after Tim Connolly took the job in Minnesota, the vibes and the feel-good nature of that Nuggets championship team or that Nuggets core changed, especially after the championship. Booth won it, or the championship was won in Booth's first year. He did make two good moves, bringing in Bruce Brown and KCP, but the philosophy of wanting to draft and sort of do like the two timelines thing that the Warriors tried to do, getting guys like Peyton Watson, drafting Christian Brown, drafting Jalen Pickett, Julian Strawther, etc. It just didn't work out fast enough. And when you also throw in the fact that your coach is basically just sending shots about the roster through quotes and stuff, and also a coach, like a lot of veteran coaches, reluctant to play young guys, it was just a non-starter from the beginning. And Jokic covered a lot of these things, these fractures that were now all of a sudden an open secret. And, like I said, I get the move. I don't get doing it right before the playoffs. And it's kind of ironic because I am working on a playoff trust index series, and my first video was going to be the Nuggets. Now I have to rethink that completely, because even if you have Jokic and even if you have a healthy Jamal Murray and that starting five is still really good, or at least the core four of, Murray, Jokic, Gordon, Michael Porter Jr., that core is still good. And Christian Brown has been awesome this year. But again, the entire team cannot defend. Aaron Gordon's been hurt a bit this year, but point of attack defense, they can't stop anybody. Russell Westbrook the last few weeks has started to turn into the Russell Westbrook that a lot of people know and like to make jokes on. And really, they are asking too much of Jokic. And also, I know they're probably resting Jamal Murray for the playoffs, but there's a lot of questions with Jamal Murray too, because he looked, slow to start the year, and he's really come on, for the last 55 games or so. But will he be able to be healthy? Will he be able to hold up in the playoffs? Will the same thing happen last year where maybe he's playing through an injury and he looks sluggish and Jokic has to carry more of the load? There's a lot of questions with this Nuggets team, and they just added more with this Michael Malone firing, at least for this season. I get the move, I guess, big picture-wise and all that stuff. You have to eventually change coaches, especially, if you don't establish that multiple championship equity where a head coach can stay there as long as they want, because I think that's the standard now. Think about it. The coaches with multiple championships, which is insane to say because a lot of these coaches, they win championships and then literally 2 years later they get fired. This is what happened with Mike Budenholzer. That's what happened with Frank Vogel. And now that's what happened with Mike Malone. But you look at the coaches like Steve Kerr, Eric Spoelstra, even though the Heat have been in the play-in and are going to be in the play-in for the third straight year, Steve Kerr, Greg Popovich, those are the longest tenured coaches, and they've won multiple championships, and they have that equity where ownership's not going to fire them. And unfortunately, because of roster construction, a shifting philosophy from GM to GM, and, you don't want to let Mike Malone off the hook in this. He has a big ego too, and he has his certain ways of doing things. And I could tell that, he's kind of hard-headed a little bit in a good way. That's what makes him what he is as a coach, and that's why he's been successful. But with all that happening, if you don't establish that multiple championship equity, you're not. In today's NBA, a head coach isn't going to last long. Coaches of the years have been fired lately. Like, JB Bickerstaff is going to win Coach of the Year after being fired the year before, and the guy that replaced him is taking the Cavs to a whole new level. Like, coaching is just a very tenuous thing right now, and I think it's the easy lever to pull. And in a hectic Western Conference, I think we're going to see more rash decisions like that from ownership over these next few seasons, especially with the teams that have been established. But, the Western Conference playoffs are going to be crazy, man. Also, sorry I haven't posted in a while. Me and my family have been going through it. We've had a few deaths in the family, and it's been a lot right now. And while I have been watching the NBA and stuff like that to take my mind off stuff, making videos was the last thing on my mind. So sorry for the weeks-long pause. It's actually just been a bad season or a bad calendar year in general with life stuff. But thankfully, the playoffs are around the corner, and now that I have some time to come up for air and stuff, hopefully I'll be dropping some more stuff. But again, apologies, been going through it, and things will get better, though.